Hey guys, in this video we're going to go over how to create a background image plane in Maya and then to create a plane that will capture a shadow of your object. So you're basically creating a compositing of a shot. You're creating just a Maya object and making it seem like it is actually sitting in the image that you have behind it. So let's get started. Alright, so this is actually my setup here, and what you can see is that I've actually created a new camera for this, and I'm also using a directional light. There is a plane in here with the use background surface on it. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is to create a camera. So I'm going to go to Create, Cameras, and let's pick the first type here. And what I'm going to do is pull up the camera 1 panel, okay, and it looks through the camera. So now I'm just going to position the camera 1 so that I can see the grid. Okay. And I'm just using my mouse and Alt key to do that. All right. I'm also going to set up my workspace so that I have a 2-panel layout. When I did that, it got rid of the camera 1, but I can just bring that back into one of my panels. So I want a camera 1 view, grid's not showing, okay, and a perspective view. Okay, that's a great way to work. So in my camera 1 view, I'm going to go to the View Image Plane, Import Image Settings. And in here, I'm going to select the image that I have downloaded here, and it is a street image, okay, of Poland. And I just selected this for this example. But as you can see in the perspective, this image is basically attached to this camera. Okay, so the camera is at an angle and this image is at an angle. And the thing about bringing an image plane in is that I can move this camera and do all sorts of things with it, but that image is going to stay attached to the camera. It doesn't really move. Okay, the camera is moving, but the image moves with it. So we're going to be rendering with this in mind through camera 1. The next thing I'm going to do is to create a resolution gate so I can see where I am rendering from camera 1. So I'm just going to go to View, Camera Settings, Resolution Gate. If you say No Gate, you're not going to see where you're rendering. If you go to Camera Settings, Resolution Gate, you'll get to see the area with which the render will occur. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to bring in plane. Okay, and this is kind of tricky in a way because you have to sort of imagine the ground plane interacting with the image. So I'm just going to go into Shading X-ray and check out what the plane looks like while I can see the image. I'm going to move it and position it so that it is laying kind of like the street is if I look at it through camera 1. So this is a little tricky. You want to make sure that you get that angling down. You don't want it to be too acute of an angle because then it's going to look kind of fake, right? So you have this plane, and right now when you render it, you're going to get this Lambert plane. Okay, that's coming in from another camera. So let's go to Render, Render, Camera 1. Right? So that's what we want right now. The next thing we're going to do is to go into Window Rendering Editor's Hypershade. And let's bring up the Use Background Shader. Now you're going to notice that I'm using Nick's car and I don't have his textures. So a lot of his car textures are going to come in looking black. Okay, that's okay. We're just using his model for the demo. Thank you, Nick. Alright, so use background. I'm going to just apply that by middle mouse button, dragging and dropping it onto my plane. Now it's going to look like it disappears, the plane, and when I render this, indeed it's going to be like a disappearing act. Okay, that's what we want. But I can see it when I bring it into selection mode. So the next thing I'm going to do is to import whatever object I have, and this is going to be Nick's car, and I imported it by going to File, Import, and I had to scale it down, okay, and make sure that the group was it was grouped properly. So Nick had it grouped properly, which worked great. And then I'm now able to position it and angle it so that it interacts with the floor. And you're going to notice that the plane is invisible, but you'll see that the car starts to sink underneath this surface. Okay, so that's how you would know whether or not it's positioned above the plane or below, right? So right now I have the object there on the road. Okay, I like the angling. Can I angle a little bit this way? All right. And you're going to notice that if I start to push him back a little bit too much, he's going to actually intersect with my image plane. Okay, so I don't want to do that. Okay, and I can see that he's going to be in my image, so let's do a quick render. Alright, so right now I'm looking at the render with the reflection, and that is expected because the reflectivity is still on. We're going to turn that off in a second, right? But I'm going to go ahead and create another object, this time a light. So let's use a directional light, either a directional light or a spotlight. They both have directions. I'm just going to use directional for now. And I'm just going to scale it real big so I can see it better. Scaling it real big is not going to affect my intensity of the light, right? And I'm just using my perspective view again to position this light. Now, this light looks like it's coming from the back of the street, this image. Okay, so let's position it slightly like that. Right? And then the other thing I need to do, this is the important thing, is I need to turn on my shadows. So I'm going to use ray trace shadows. Okay, so make sure that that is turned on because that reacts to mental ray. So now I'm going to render it again and let's see what happens. Render camera 1. Okay, so the shadow is actually coming in, and I do want to move my car back a little bit so I can see a little better. Okay, so let's pull up my camera 1 and grab my group of the camera of the car and move it back a little bit. Right, and I'm just going to do a regional render here. Okay, so I can see that the silhouette of the shadow a little bit more. And yeah, the shadow's coming in. This looks good, but it's also the shadow at 100%. So what I'm going to do is go into my material attributes of my plane, which is the use background, and I'm going to use this shadow mask to lighten my shadow. So if I bring this down to, let's say, 0.57, what you're going to get is a much gentler shadow, right? And I'm also going to turn off my reflectivity and turn off my specular, okay, because I don't need my ground to be doing any specularity right now, right? And the last thing I'm going to do is the shadow, although it is not opaque black, it has some hard edges. And what I can do is inside my light settings, okay, I just selected my directional light, okay, and under my ray trace shadow attributes, I can bump up my shadow rays and light angle to, let's say, a value of 10 and 13, okay. If you're curious about what these things do, you can look it up, but that will basically create some soft edges on my shadows for me, softer edges, all right? And it might be a little bit too much, okay. See, it looks like it's sort of floating, right? And I can keep working with the positioning and the shadow raise, light angle, as well as the shadow mask of the used background too. All right, so that's pretty much it for this workflow. One thing you can see is the alpha of this image. This is the color image. This is the alpha, and you can see that the shadow is definitely coming in.